This is clearly a terrible idea. We're skateboarding to the pub. Wilson on the lead, Pharrell in my arms. What could possibly go wrong? Come on. Come on. So skateboarding to the pub actually kind of went quite well. Wilson ran alongside on the longer lead, and I had to carry Pharrell all the way, which does get quite heavy these days after such a long ride, but it worked. The trouble came when, of course, I tried to film it, because holding a puppy, a lead, the camera and the controller for the skateboard, I mean, it's just too much. Don't forget, I'm a bloke. We can barely do two things at once, let alone four. So that kind of didn't work out. But breakfast was lovely with Mrs. P. She's at home today, which is a rare occasion where we can spend some time during the day together with no children. So that was cool, and I'm now walking the dogs home, and Claire has taken the skateboard back for me in the car. So what should we talk about today? Right, well, a couple of things to pick up on. First of all, I just want to pick up on the Daniel Ricciardo situation from yesterday's video. Lots of comments. I was talking about how Red Bull's decision, if indeed they've made that decision to go with Honda as a power unit from next year onwards, would affect any decision Daniel Ricciardo has to make about his future, either with the team or leaving to go somewhere else. Lots of you pointing out that Daniel Ricciardo may actually end up running out of options. And I think it's an interesting point. I think it's a real difficult situation that Daniel has found himself in. He's definitely one of the most valued drivers in Formula One right now. I don't think anybody would disagree with his ability, with his potential, with his talent. I think he's one of the strongest drivers. Guys. He's one of the strongest drivers on the Formula One grid. I would put him up there with the likes of Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel and Fernando Alonso. I'd put him in that group. I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, let me know. But look, given that he's a driver arguably of that kind of calibre, so one of the top few drivers available on the grid, you would think that every team would be leaping after him, would be jumping to try and get him to sign a contract. And yet it's not necessarily that simple, is it? Because politics take over sometimes, and sometimes the best drivers don't end up in the best seats. And I suspect that's the situation we've got going on at the moment with Daniel Ricciardo. We know that Kimi is probably at the end of his career. We suspect that, well, I know that he is out of contract at the end of this season. He's not really expecting to sign an extension. However, we have said that before with Kimi Räikkönen and Ferrari. You know, the whole dynamic with him and Sebastian actually works very well. Sebastian likes having him as a teammate, partly because, you know, he has the better of him generally, but partly because they kind of get on to some extent. Kimi doesn't cause any fuss, he doesn't ruffle any feathers. You know, he plays the game when needed, he does what the team asks of him, and basically he's there to back up Sebastian Vettel, to allow him to go on and fight for a championship. So Sebastian doesn't want to upset that balance. There's no reason for Sebastian to want anybody else in that team. So then the question is, how much influence does Sebastian Vettel have over driver selection? Well, I don't think any of us really know that, but he does have quite a bit of influence within that team. Sergio Marchionne is one of his biggest fans. He backs him all the way. We can tell that from the way that some of their strategies have played out over the last couple of years. All of their eggs are in the Sebastian Vettel basket, aren't they? So I guess from that point of view, they would want to keep Sebastian happy. And if that means not bringing in a driver like if that means not bringing in a driver like Daniel Ricciardo, because it might upset the Sebastian Vettel balance, well then maybe that's a consideration for them. We all know what happened last time Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo were paired together at Red Bull. Daniel came in his first year with that team and pretty much beat him, pretty much outpaced him, and certainly made him look very ordinary after 4 years of winning the title for Sebastian. So I can see from Sebastian's point of view that he may not want that to happen again. From a fan's point of view, you might look at that and say, well, come on Sebastian, man up. What we want is the best drivers in the best cars. And from a Ferrari perspective, if you've got 2 great drivers in your team, surely you've got a better chance of winning the Constructors' Championship, something that Ferrari haven't even been close to winning for a number of years now. To some extent because of their policy of always backing one driver. And I think that's a great argument. I think that's something that if I was running a team, it would be near the top of my priority list to make sure I've got 2 good drivers who, if one can win, if one can't win, the other one will be there to win, pick up the pieces. And we should be looking for 1-2 finishes at every race. At the moment, they're not doing that. Sebastian is winning. He's got the team behind him. He's got strategies that favour him. And Kimi is there to be a rear gunner, if you like, and fend off the competition to allow Sebastian to go on and win. Sometimes that means that Kimi, doesn't end up in with a shout of winning the race. Equally, Kimi's not performing at the highest level anymore, so Kimi is not really offering much of a threat to the opposition in terms of taking poles and taking wins away from Mercedes and Red Bull Racing. Over at Mercedes, we've got another sort of unanswered question in that, firstly, at the moment, of course, they've got Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas. A decent driver pairing. Valtteri is equally, I guess, similar in some respects to the Kimi at Ferrari situation. Probably not the biggest threat to the competition, although I think he's actually driven very well this year. I think he's put himself in a decent position, but he's not really a match for Lewis Hamilton. Is he exciting enough? Is he aggressive enough? Is he a guy who's going to win a world championship? I'm not sure. At the moment, it doesn't necessarily feel that way, but, I think give him a chance. I think he's done very well, and I think he's done very well for Mercedes. He can be a great Mercedes ambassador. He says the right things in front of the media, and he's generally just a nice guy. Lewis Hamilton, of course, we know his credentials, we know how good he is, but he hasn't yet put pen to paper on a contract beyond the end of this season. Now, Mercedes have been burned in the past, haven't they? Nico Rosberg dropped that bombshell after winning the title in 2016, just a few days later to say he was retiring. How worried are Mercedes about that? How concerned might they be about preparing for the next few years? They need to know what Lewis is going to do. Maybe they do know. Maybe they just haven't had the signature yet, but maybe it's just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. We don't know. But until that is signed and announced, that is still a possibility. If Lewis were to walk away, Daniel Ricciardo would be the best place, or the best person, to jump in that seat and lead that team. Surely they would be desperate to have him. But what about Daniel Ricciardo himself? What about Red Bull Racing? How long can they wait for Daniel to make a decision? They need to be making plans ahead of next year just as much as everybody else does. So at some point, there's got to be a deadline put on his signature going on that contract or not. So, sports day done. Now I've got to head off to Windsor for a talk, an F1 based talk. Sports day is a lot of fun. Right, let me know what you think as ever. I know you always do, and I really appreciate it. I do love going through your comments, so please keep them coming. What would you do? What do you think Daniel Ricciardo should do? What do you think Red Bull Racing should do? What should Ferrari and Mercedes do? So many questions right now regarding driver lineups for 2019 and beyond. What would you do? You're the team boss. Make the decision. Right, don't forget to like the video if you have enjoyed it. Share it around, please, with your mates. That would really appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you hit that little bell just down there somewhere, you'll get a little notification every time a video pops up. And in that case, you will never miss another one. So do it. Right, thanks very much. I will speak to you tomorrow.